All right. Welcome everyone to our first group care information forum. We are so glad all of you are here today. And we thank you all for taking time out of your day to be here. The first thing that we are going to ask you to do is please in the chat, write your name and the agency that you're from, so that you can receive credit for the time that you were here today for training. If you could also change your name in your Zoom name to your name and agency, that would be helpful as well. But we will be reviewing the chat today. Thank you. Next slide, please. So for today, we will cover the background on our negotiated rulemaking, WAC updates, our strength-based approach and collaborative compliance, the why behind the WAC change, a group care WAC training walkthrough, transition planning for new WAC, and Q&As. And we hope that all of you will be ready for that because we are taking notes. Next slide, please. So we have our licensing division group care leadership in the space today. We have Maria Tovar, who is our LD SAM Group Care Deputy Senior Administrator. Joe Rizzone, who is our Group Care Administrator. Melissa Fielding, Group Care Licensing Supervisor. Maureen Mahana, our Group Care Licensing Supervisor. And Enrique Gillian, Group Care Licensing Supervisor. So we thank all of our group care leadership for being here today.
Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here with you today. My name is Anshul Dar, and I'm the Group Care Negotiated Rulemaking Project Manager. I'm going to spend just a few minutes giving you some background on the DS settlement and why it's such a critical foundation for the work that we're all doing together. And now I do want to recognize that many of you on this call may already be familiar with DS, but we do want to make sure we're all kind of starting from the same place because understanding this history really helps us make sense of why these changes are happening. So the DS settlement is a lawsuit that was filed against DCYF back in 2021. And DS are the initials of one of the young people who helped bring that lawsuit forward. Now, the lawsuit highlighted concerns that youth, especially those who had experienced like multiple placements, weren't always getting the support and services that they needed. It also called out the need for licensing rules that are more culturally responsive and developmentally appropriate. So DCYF agreed to settle with the plaintiffs in September of 2022 through what's known as the DS settlement. As part of that settlement, we committed to making improvements across 8 different areas. One of those 8 areas is known as 4.9 Revising Licensing Standards. And we're actually going to do a deeper dive into the specifics of that particular systems improvement. So 4.9 Revising Licensing Standards. We'll go into much more detail about it at our assessment and regulation culture training later this month. One last note that I wanted to mention, and this is really important. So as part of the DS settlement, we agreed to use the negotiated rulemaking or NRM process to develop the new group care licensing rules. And that's a really crucial piece of how we've approached this work. Next slide, please. So when we first set out to revise the group care licensing rules, we started just by listening. And on this slide, you'll see the 4 main themes that kind of kept bubbling up during the community listening and learning sessions that we held back in the fall of 2023. And these 4 themes that you see on the slide, they eventually became what are known as our guiding principles for the entire NRM process. So first and foremost is youth and child safety and well-being. That is at the heart of everything we're doing. So every single rule change we considered was looked at through that lens of how it would impact youth safety and well-being above all else. Second, you'll see is the need for culturally and developmentally appropriate rules. Because as we know, all young people in care come from very diverse backgrounds and have very different needs depending on where they are developmentally. Third, we heard loud and clear the need for differentiation and flexibility, meaning we wanted rules that are clear about their purpose, but also ones that give caregivers the flexibility to meet kids' needs in different ways. And finally, there's minimizing barriers and reducing undue burden, So we want rules that set high standards for care, but also ones that don't create unnecessary hurdles for providers who are doing this important work. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about the negotiated rulemaking work itself, because it was a really extensive collaborative process. From December of 2023 to August of 2024, representatives from about 12 different participant groups engaged in 13 virtual negotiation sessions, 56 breakout discussions, and 55 polls, all facilitated by our third-party facilitator, Public Consulting Group. We also hosted 2 tribal feedback sessions last summer, and we brought in input from 6 different community partners. Now, here's what all that work led to. So of the 181 total licensing rules, or WAC, in group care, about 86 rules, so almost half, were formally negotiated. The remaining 95 rules weren't negotiated, usually because they're tied to state laws, federal requirements like FFPSA, or because there really wasn't much community feedback on them after many opportunities to weigh in. Rules that were negotiated were either directly tied to the DS settlement or flagged as priorities during our listening and learning sessions. So overall, it's a very extensive process, and it laid the foundation for the new rules we'll be moving forward with. Now I'll pass it over to Joe, who's going to walk us through the WAC amendments.
Good morning. My name is Joe Rossoni. I'm the group care administrator, for those that don't know me. So for the WAC amendments, you can see that there are new requirements. The purpose of these requirements are, one, for autonomy and privacy. So there will be plans required for technology and activities. There's a higher standard for confidentiality for youth records. 2, it's to help facilitate connections. So there will be plans required for culture and peer socialization. 3, for school stability, a higher standard for children and youth for educational advocacy. And 4, education, training, and coaching. Child and youth well-being files will be something that's going to be new, that's separate than what you're currently doing. And 5, there will be an increase in youth engagement, so a higher standard for children and youth for their belongings, more inclusion of youth voice also in decision-making. And then 6, meal requirements are going to be, even though they're currently required, but there will be requirements for having some planning around how we serve and balance their nutritional needs, cultural development needs, and foods that they may enjoy. And then 7, the requirements of additional training requirements, specifically around cultural responsibility, LGBTQIA+, and also trauma-informed. So the next slide, please. So this is also the introduction of the strength-based approach, which is going to be the first training. We're going to do an in-service training for our licensors next week, and then there are 3 trainings for providers that I will attend some of them, and so will Maria Tovar, as well as the supervisors, for any questions. So the strength-based approach basically is we just want to send a clear message from licensing shifting towards this, that the direction that licensing division would like to move, we're transitioning to a strength-based approach and how we do our work, how we engage our partnerships with our providers. We see this as a shift throughout the way better to align the practices that we value, such as collaboration, enhanced transparency and communication in our relationships, and promoting better youth outcomes. We realize that many of our licensors are already doing this and actually have a lot of expertise around this, but our upcoming assessment and cultural regulation training it's now this month, will be an opportunity for us to build on our collective knowledge and learn from one another and actually discuss how can we, as a licensing regulatory agency, support providers better with collaboration. And I will now move this to Maria.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, everyone. So just talking a little bit more about what strength-based approach is. So a strength-based approach is the licensing division-wide engagement process that emphasizes abilities, knowledge, strengths, and capacities rather than deficits or shortcomings. This approach recognizes that all individuals within the DCYF community, which includes licensees, licensors, families, are resilient and capable of growth, learning, and change. And as Joe mentioned, while many licensing staff are already using this approach, it may be new to some. So reducing bias, reducing their influence on our decision-making, build fairness and equity in licensing practices, recognizing strengths, acknowledge that and value that licensees are already doing what they're already doing to meet the standards, being mindful of licensees' resiliency and capability to learn, grow, and change, respect the licensees' expertise and knowledge to meet the needs of their children, youth, families, and facilities, fostering an understanding, support licensees in understanding the purpose and intent behind the rules, so providing technical assistance, and approach areas of noncompliance with curiosity and open-ended questions, achieving collaborative compliance, so honoring cultural differences and diverse perspectives and meeting compliance, and maintain a growth mindset and openness to the different methods of achieving compliance. And just to point out, as I believe Anshul mentioned and Joe did too, this is just a quick overview of the strength-based approach. And we'll dig into this concept more in our assessment and regulation cultural training later this month. Next slide, please. Collaborative compliance is the result of utilizing a strength-based approach to identify how licensees will comply with the intent of the WAC rules and tailored ways to meet the unique developmental, the cultural needs of children and youth in care. So this means achieving compliance with an emphasis on shared decision-making, which starts with collaboration between licensors and licensees, encouraging innovation. So licensees are encouraged to develop tailored WAC compliance solutions, empowering licensees as the experts. Licensees are viewed as the experts of their facility and the programs and the compliance of their programs. Embracing perspective and critical thinking. So licensors view situations from the licensee's perspective and use critical thinking to reach a collaborative compliance. Next slide, please. So the why behind the changes. Having an LD-wide strength-based approach to achieving a collaborative compliance, improves the quality and effectiveness of the licensing services so that licensees can have a comparable experience regardless of the facility type or location, or creating equity within LD. Utilizing a relational approach to collaboration between licensees and licensors builds trust and encourages collaboration on problem solving for minor situations before they become major concerns. It also, utilizing shared problem solving leads to licensees and licensors feeling confident in their shared understanding of the WAC intent and the plan for compliance, which leads to increased compliance. And having the ability to collaborate based on a shared understanding, it allows for tailored compliance strategies, leading to more culturally and developmentally appropriate experiences for the children and the youth that are in care. So I will go ahead and pass it back to Anshul.
Thanks, Maria. So before we move on to our next section, we just want to quickly highlight some upcoming milestones in our project timeline, which you'll see on this slide. So this winter, the draft rules were reviewed by our Assistant Attorney General and our Assistant Secretary for Licensing Division, Ruben Reeves. Coming up next, we're planning to launch the public comment period in early May, so very early this month, maybe even the second week of May, and everyone will receive more information about that. This summer, around July, we're going to post the new group care licensing rules on our project website. But just to be clear, the new rules won't actually go into effect at that time. They're anticipated to officially go live on January 1st, 2026. So just a quick kind of snapshot of our project timeline. And with that, I'll turn it over to Abby to give you an update on the training plan.
Thank you, Anshul. Good morning, everyone. My name is Abby Reynolds, and I am the Group Care Training Specialist. So today I am sharing a visual of the group care trainings that will be offered starting this month of this year through December. There will be a total of 15 training modules offered, which will be equivalent to a total of 31.75 hours for our DCYF staff, and then 25.75 hours, for our providers. These trainings will be a combination of instructor-led virtual e-learning modules, and then we have one in-person module. You can see that this graph is color-coded. So it indicates how the training will be offered. The tan color indicates that it will only be offered to our DCYF staff. So you'll see that there are 2 sessions that are only for our DCYF staff, one in May and then one in December. The next color is the purple, which indicates that the training will be an instructor-led virtual session, so it will be offered live. And this training will actually be taking place over the course of the next 2 weeks. The next color you'll see is the green, which means that these modules will be offered as e-learnings. And then finally, the last color is blue, which indicates that it will be an in-person training session. And again, I want to share that the only trainings that are only for our internal DCYF staff are the tan ones in May and December. So the rest of the modules, modules 1 through 14, will be offered to both our DCYF staff as well as providers. Now, as we look more closely at the months through 2025, you will see that we were really intentional about having an equitable amount of training hours per month. So each month ranges between 2.5 hours and 6 hours each. Now, those were the main training highlights that I really wanted to share today over the group care modules. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Joe.
Good morning again. So as you can see, the new WACs, when they go live, these are some of the things that they're going to affect. So the new WAC will affect the current policies, procedures, practice for our state licensed group care facilities. We do have currently a transition planning group that is working on timelines related to each of the areas you'll see on the slide. And we're thinking about ways how it's going to impact your work and how we're going to deal with that. Some examples that you may need to be made aware of include, when would you need to submit updated policy procedures, because the WACs will go live on January 1st, and the old WACs will be archived. What will happen to your license if it expires shortly before the WAC? It doesn't make sense to renew necessarily like right before we would go into a new WAC. And then what will happen if you need to hire new staff to be in compliance with the new WAC? Because there are some new staffing requirements. We are now going to open this up for questions, and we'd like to hear the items that you would really like help with as we transition, so we can have a better understanding of how we can support you while we transition to the new WAC. And I'm going to turn this over to the supervisors for questions, and we will be taking notes. We don't know, like right now, how everything's going to work, but that's what the transition work group is for, and we just need your input. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Like Joe said, my name is Maureen Mahana. For all of you who don't know, I'm one of the group care licensing supervisors. Thanks for joining us this morning. As Joe said, we're going to open it up for a Q&A, but we also really want to hear from all of you how your group care licensing team can support you through this transition over the next several months. So if you want to just raise your hand or put questions or feedback in the chat. If we, like Joe said, if we don't have the answers today, we're compiling a list of the questions and we'll definitely get back to you.
And while folks are kind of thinking, this is Anshul again, I have been asked, anybody who has joined the call via phone, if you could please update your name on Zoom, that would be wonderful so that we can provide credit for this session. So if you join via phone, if you could please update your name in our Zoom chat, we'll make sure that you get credit. Thank you.
Are those trainable hours credits that you're talking about?
I believe those are for the certificates for the in-service. Is that right, Joe?
Yes. So for these trainings and the series of trainings, we are allowing for credits for in-service training. And also good to hear from you, Owens.
There's a question in the chat, Maureen. Do you see it, from Lori at Deer Lake? I don't know that we have. So the question is, will this be the only training for new expectations? Lori, is your question about the upcoming virtual training that's being held? Can you clarify what your question is, Lori? Can you unmute?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I was just wondering if we're going to cover all the new expectations today at this training, or if there'll be additional trainings after this.
So does workforce development want to talk
Yeah.
a little bit more about that? Thank you.
I'll take that,
Thank
Melissa, no
you.
problem. So, Abby, or who's driving, Heather, can you go back to the training slide real quick, and we'll just maybe talk through that a little bit again. So this training series is going to be offered, like we talked about, like May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. 2 of them for our staff. The rest are available to everyone, including providers. This is when we're going to roll these out. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is when you need to take them, right? So when you look at these green trainings, these are going to be really WAC specific. So the training that we're doing this month is really focused on that partnership, that collaboration that we talked about. All these trainings that you see going forward are really what is the difference between the old WAC and the new WAC, really in the details of that. What does that look like? What are some best practices? It's not necessarily a how-to, because a lot of what we're talking about with this training series is how to partner with our group care licensing program to come up with that how-to. But it really is like, what are the big differences? What are the differences in the old WAC and the new WAC? And these are going to be offered for providers. They're going to be a webinar video, so you can go and watch them anytime. So even though it says it's in June, whenever you have the time to do those, I mean, we would prefer that you watch them in order because they kind of build on each other, but they're going to be available online, and we don't plan to take them down until they're out of date. So if you hire new folks or you need a refresher, this will all be available, all recorded on our public facing website. But the idea is it's kind of built as a series. And so you can kind of go through them, take them in order, learn what you want to learn about each specific WAC. And then if you have questions, or maybe some of those WACs aren't clear and you need to revisit it, you can go kind of a la carte back to each section and revisit that training and dive deeper into that if you need to. So it'll be available, not just as a moment in time, but it will live on our website.
Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no worries.
I see something in the chat. Christina from Vanessa Beham wanted to see if we could put up the last slide again that shows the different areas changes will happen. I think that's the one that Joe spoke to about the transition plan. Is that correct, Christina?
Yes, the one the slide that's right after this one. Yes, this one. Thank you.
I see Owens, you have your hand up. Not sure if you know that you're on mute, Owens, or if you're still have a question, but come off mute whenever you are able, and I'll move on to the next question. Whitney, how are the new requirements for staff going to affect the staff we already have? Whitney, do you think you can expand on your question a little bit?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you great.
Perfect. Yeah, I just remember we had a staffing kind of requirement change a couple years ago, and a lot of our staff no longer qualified to be staff. So I'm just wondering, since we didn't really talk about what the changes are going to be, if we have staff that are no longer qualified, are we going to give them some sort of break to be able to keep them, or are they going to have to be like taken off the schedule until they can meet requirements? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good question. I'm wondering if Joe or Maria might be able to answer that. We haven't actually seen, along with most of you, we haven't seen the new WACs. And there's been a lot of changes to them since we have last seen them. And so they're going to be available for public comment in the next couple of weeks. So Joe and Maria might have some additional information on what that will look like if is there a higher standard of qualifications and how that might impact current staff.
So I can speak towards that. So again, like Maureen, I have not seen the final copy. The last copy I saw of the WAC was back in November. So I don't know what the new WACs are going to read as far as qualifications. I do believe, though, as far as staff qualifications, they will be less strict as they currently are. The big change, I think, related specifically to this, and I don't know the name of it, there will be a requirement to have a new position that I believe is called well-being staff, which is taking the place, I believe, of the case manager. I can't fully answer it until I actually see the final WACs, which I have not yet.
So I've reviewed the draft, and Janine Rubin let me know if this is not accurate, but Joe's correct. Like staff that you currently have, these WACs are not going to impact them. Like they're not going to like not qualify for their current positions. So if that's the worry, I don't believe that that's going to affect any of your current staff.
Awesome, thank you.
Owens, are you able to?
I am sorry, I had some technical
Hi,
difficulties.
Okay.
I was trying to turn on my camera so I could say hi to Joe.
Hey, Owens.
Hey, so on the updating the policy and procedures, are we only gonna submit for the policy and procedures that are being changed or updated, or the whole thing?
So I can speak towards that too. Again, Owens, I have not seen the WAC, but I can tell you this much, that all of the WAC numbers that are in 145 currently are going to change. So every WAC number will change. So if you're quoting a WAC, in any of your policy procedure or saying, hey, this is the policy procedure for this particular WAC, that would have to be updated. And there are going to be plans that will also have to be updated because there's going to be, various plans for kids like their phone plan or whatever. So those things will have to be updated. I will know more, and everyone will know more once those are actually out to public comment. But yes, and that's part of what we're trying to figure out is how best to do that, because ultimately, we want to go into the new year with new policy procedures, because that's where the WAC is going to be, now have to be adhered to, with the tentative start date of January 1st. But yes, there will be a lot of revision likely to policy procedure. We're supposed to be getting a crosswalk as far as like which WACs have changed substantially as far as like content that will have to be readdressed in the policy and procedure.
Thank you.
Anshul, would you be able to provide kind of an update of when possibility of when the WACs are going to go out for the public to review?
Sure. So the anticipated date for filing our CR 102 will be around May 7th. And then we are anticipating that the public comment period will occur most likely the week after. So we've kind of been sharing like early May, everyone will be notified.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Anshul, but I believe the public comment, once it actually goes to public comment, I believe that's for a period of 30 days.
That's what I believe too. I think it's approximately 4 to 5 weeks, as far as I know.
Can the training team maybe share with the with our providers in regards to the line of communication, so that they get ongoing updates in regards to what's the latest and greatest in regards to some of the questions that may have been answered? I know we briefly talked about that one of our last meetings, but is that something that is available to them so that they understand sort of what's happening in the latest, and if there's specific questions that folks may have that didn't get answered here today, maybe in the near future can be answered by our team?
Sure, I can speak that, Enrique. So just kind of part of what we like to do with these sessions is, one, I saw a question about recording. So you might have heard at the beginning, that little recording chime come on. We will record this webinar and we'll post it online. So you can watch it again. You can share it with staff that weren't able to make it today. We'll also create an FAQ document. So the questions that were answered today, we'll capture those, but also the questions that weren't answered today. For those questions that we don't have answers to, we'll work with our leadership or our program leadership and do our best to get those answers. Some of them might still be a little unknown just based on, some of the things that we have left. And then we'll share that resource out with the listserv to all of our providers that were either here or were unable to attend. And as far as training, I will follow up on a second question I saw in the chat about the October training. We will try to give lots of advance. I know in person is a little bit more of a struggle since you have to physically be there instead of, being able to attend virtually, which is a little bit more flexible. Hopefully we'll have those dates really finalized in July, like early July. And our aim will be to look at, so where are our different facilities, what's going to make the most sense geographically, and we'll try to offer those sessions. And we do a pretty good job about this, of closest to our different areas where we have more facilities, more providers, And if we have to do a session somewhere central, like maybe Olympia area, we'll do that too. The idea is we really want to come to all of you and make it really accessible for you to be able to come. And also for our staff, because we do have a statewide team and they're across the state as well. And if you have questions about that, like, I said, we'll probably start sending those emails out early July. You can email us anytime. It's kind of a no wrong door. The questions will make their way to us, but I know Anshul, probably part of what we'll do today is share our communication email that you can reach out to. But you can reach out about training questions anytime, and we'll try to accommodate what will work for you based on geography and time.
Hi, Amy.
I was just going to say, is it fair for me just to jump in?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I have two questions. One is I've been through a lot of WAC changes over the years, and never have we been expected to do so much mandatory training. So just curious as to a little bit of the why behind that. And then am I correct in thinking that this is only one person from each organization is to go through these trainings? Is that accurate? And then if that is accurate, why? Thank you.
So the training is not mandatory, Amy. Just want to make that very clear. It's being offered. And I think, you and I have been around a long time. And you also were one of our great partners in the NRM process. So, you are a person who actually has seen a lot of the changes to the new WAC. Whereas a lot of other people on this Zoom meeting really don't know what's coming down the pike. So I think different than other times that WAC has changed. I mean, I think this is a major, major overhaul. I mean, just to be very transparent. And so training is being offered to providers because of that. And, not saying that it shouldn't have been offered maybe in the past, but this is a gigantic overhaul of the WAC. And so, but it is not mandatory. I just want to make that clear. Sorry, Jesse, I see you nodding your head and I'm speaking about training, so please go ahead, but I just wanted
You're all over it.
wanted
No,
to
you're all over
dispel
it.
that rumor out there. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, that's exactly right. Like, this is meant to be, and Melissa, you nailed it. It's like, this is meant to be a benefit to you, not a burden. So, and again, it's when you see those months, those aren't only going to be available during those months. You can take these anytime. If I were to ask you to take them in order, you don't have to, but it probably would make more sense to you. So when you see that sequence and you're looking at that training schedule, which we'll share out, it's gonna kind of make a lot more sense to start with the first one and go through the series because they kind of build on the practice, but you don't have to. And you don't have to take them in the months that they're provided. You don't have to take them at all, but it's a resource that we developed to support both our staff and to support providers. And they're really going to be at your own pace. So the only ones where you really have to be physically present is the first one that's virtual, if you decide to attend those, and then the ones that we'll have in person. And the reason you asked a good question about, are we limiting these to one person per facility? We are, just for those virtual or that in person, just based on capacity. Otherwise, we'd have to do training all year long to try to accommodate everybody. And we've kind of learned over the years, train a trainer model is something that works a little bit better, just based on, experience of who needs to be there, who's going to be able to communicate this back to their staff. So that's what we're hoping to do, is provide some trainer resources for those folks that do come, of how can you go back to your program and share some of this. That's just for those two trainings. For that first one, that's the regulation and assessment culture. And then the one we'll do later in October. Those virtual trainings, they're online. Anybody can take those anytime. They can be shared, they're links. So really tried hard to minimize limiting class size, but we are just limited by capacity, even building capacity for those ones that we're doing that are instructor led. But these will be available to everybody. And even the ones that we're going to do instructor led. So for example, the one that's in May, we are going to record that session and have an availability. And if people are we really want to, we weren't able to attend one of the in-person sessions in October, we'll have a plan on how we can still share that information out with folks that aren't there.
I also, I know Anshul put a couple of the emails in the chat that you will hopefully take note of, but also as you think of ways that your group care licensing team can support you, you can email your licensor directly, any of the SUPs, or the group care questions email that Anshul put up there. The more information we hear from you all on how we can support you, the better hopefully this transition will go. So just know we're always available in here and want to support you through this.
Well, that may be it for questions. We could sit here with more awkward silence, but you know, if that's it, that's probably it, I would say.
Melissa, I'm sorry, I can't find this hand raise
Audra,
thing.
good
How are you?
morning.
I don't know that it's necessarily a question, but I just want to put this out here. I appreciate that everyone wants to help and support each other kind of getting through this next, transitions are always hard. That's just bottom line, they always are. However, what I will say as providers, we're having whole other conversations about rates and different things that are going on and how all these things are being affected. It is very unsettling to not have things that are going to need to be in place here in 6 months. And I understand there's going to be a timeline in base for that without having that information kind of ahead of time. We need it as soon as possible. The amount of time, energy, and funding that it takes to get your policies realigned and everything, especially most of us, at least I would hope most of us, are nationally accredited and have met that standard. And so it's not just a simple, like, change this part of your policy. There's a multitude of levels that will have to be done. And so it's not, I wish it was as simple as just changing one area, but it's not. And so I think as a provider, I'm just going to say the sooner we can get the information with due dates and expectations, and if we hold that to everybody, then okay, we're in. We understand that there's going to be some changes coming. We do appreciate all the effort, but I think there's a little misunderstanding that this isn't just a little changing. Like, we're going to have to effectively change a lot of our stuff with our national accreditations and different stuff like that. So sooner we get it, the better, because it's going to take some time.
Are you referring to the sooner that you lay your eyes on the WAC? Is that what you're talking about? Yes.
Correct.
I know.
Because especially if you're saying every single code in there changed, I just about, Joe, I like you, but I was like, oh my gosh, heart attack coming. And we know from working at the NRM, like, we've got stuff to do, but yeah, it's a big overhaul, and nobody is like, that's on each of our individual providers to handle. As we're the contractors, so we have to update that information, but it's a heavy lift. It's not a small thing.
No, you're being totally realistic, Audra, and I know that you were a backup for the NRM, and so you did participate in some of them, so you're somewhat aware of what's coming. And I think I appreciate you saying it, because what seems like a long ways out, January, is really not. And I mean, I think that we owe it to people to be very transparent that the time frame is going to, like, really probably smack all of us in the face, LD provider, like, how short it is that these are now our reality, and the massive overhaul that it is. It's, the learning curve is going to be like going up Mount Everest for all of us. Like, in the whole time I've ever been in LD, I haven't experienced this much of a shift. So, we're all going to have to be, in this 100% together. It's going to be challenging for all of us. So, yeah, I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. And I mean, that's why anything that you think of that that we can do to help, we really want to do that to the extent that we can.
That's it. I mean, I think you guys have mentioned the crosswalk, which is great. I know Jules probably has some ideas as well, but it's get us the information as soon as possible. Like, that really is what it comes down to, because in the other side of this, I appreciate asking about the question over, what about staff that are currently employed with me in that fluctuation, but, are the staffing ratios going to change, or this? Like, I can't change my ratio overnight, because it takes me 3 months to get somebody even, able to work as is. So the sooner we get the information, the better. And at least I would say myself and most of the programs that I collaborate with, like, we need the information as soon as possible. And I understand you guys do too. That would just be that would be my big recommendation, but looks like Jules might have some too.
Hi, Jules.
Hi. Happy May Day. I have
Yes.
that, it's gonna be May song going through my head, so I want to put it in everyone else's too, so you can enjoy my misery. Anyways, I do have some questions specific to staffing ratios and stuff. I was pretty involved with the NRM process, so some of the stuff that has already been mentioned looks a little bit like an alternate for some stuff that we talked about. And so I just want to echo Audra's, it just sounds like there's a lot of big changes, case management to now having a wellness. So I don't remember the term that Joe used, wellness coordinator or something along those lines. So just a little bit concerned regarding what that time looks like, right? Because we have people in those positions already, how much that's going to pivot. So just a little bit concerned about some of those bigger changes, and maybe you guys can't speak to that because it sounds like a lot of you haven't even seen them either. The other part I would just like to say is we are right now in the middle of rate modeling with DCYF, Tim Kelly and Hannah and Christine Domes over in contracts. And so I have kind of brought this up, but I want to make sure that we're including anything that is going to be a huge cost driver in the rate modeling so that we can, while we're in that space and doing that work, we can add in some of this stuff. So I don't know if there's any, I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm just echoing and piggybacking on what Audra said regarding trying to get a hold of these as soon as possible, because it sounds like maybe there's some bigger changes than what even I had been expecting.
Jules, how long did your rate modeling go for?
Well, they're finishing up final. They weren't able to give me the final one. I just met with them yesterday. We've been kind of having meetings back and forth. They haven't got it approved yet, but they're still kind of in the middle of it. I feel though that was a loaded question. Now I'm getting really worried. Is there going to be a lot?
I mean, I don't know. Like it does seem, I mean, I don't have anything to do with that, but it seems like if you could just put it out there that, you know, you're agreeing to rate modeling when you haven't even seen the new WACs, which may impact you. It seems maybe unfair. I don't know. And I don't know if they'll be like, oh, well, I don't know. But I mean, I think you could say that, like, can we at least agree to hold off a couple weeks until we can see the new WACs in public comment before it's all, I mean, I don't know, but I just think that, you know, the timeline to have something finalized and then this new WAC comes out and then everybody's all up in arms would be really sad. I can't say that that's what would happen, but it seems like you should have the ability to see that, and everyone should, before rate modeling goes on its merry way.
Right. Well, I know that was a rough ledge session too. So I'm not sure what that even means, but just making sure that providers can, because we are running lean, right, with smaller censuses. And so just wanting to make sure, and I have a WACF meeting coming up directly after this one. So I just want to kind of make sure to, I don't know. It seems like there's two different things going on, and ledge session obviously is closed, and it wasn't the best session we've ever had in Washington State. And so just some concerns that are brewing, I guess. So
Jules, just to help with some of those concerns, you can always just tell Tim Kelly, he and I are friends, to just reach out to me. We can talk through anything.
Listen, I'm gonna name drop Joe. Could you just hold your horses? I'll do that. see how far that gets me.
I talk to him all the time.
Okay. Awesome.
I just want to add, I believe the position that Joe referenced, it's called a care coordinator. And so those of you that were a part of the NRM probably already heard that term. So it's referencing the care coordinator. It's not an additional position from what was discussed during the NRM group meetings.
I see Harvard Flock has his hand up. He's had his hand up a little bit.
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback on that. I don't think the wellness coordinator, I think it's actually taking that whole discussion was going, hey, why are some of our case managers having to have master's level degrees and when we're not doing clinical case management? And I think that's what that position was lowering And so like if you're having to do your clinical consults or having to have a master's, I think that was lowering that expectation. I think that was actually benefiting us all, not adding an extra position. But my other question was how close do we think during the public commenting period are those WACs going to be to the finalized WACs? Do we expect that there's going to be any changes made during that period, or on top of that, we know that we're going to see it during the public commenting period within the next couple of weeks. When do we think they're going to be finalized and we can see final WACs?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Janine Takini. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Licensing Division. And I've had the privilege of getting involved with the Group Care NRM project in the last several months. So I'll try to answer that question and know that probably there might be some minor changes. The goal of NRM is really to have the product that everybody has kind of negotiated. If things were stuck, decisions were made, that should be as close to final when it goes to public comment. Now, I understand there's going to be some things like some wording that doesn't make sense. These numbers don't align. You know, we want to hear your feedback, and the goal of NRM is to have very few changes when it gets to public comment.
So as soon as public comment starts coming out and we start seeing those WACs, we could potentially start dwindling some of our policies and procedures and then making little notes. And then if we know that something changed, we can go back and edit it. But we could, for the most part, make a lot of our changes to our policies and procedures off of that release that comes with the public comment period.
Yeah, I think that I would be comfortable saying yes to that, and just know that every comment that we receive is also reviewed and decisions are made on that. So, you know, hopefully we are pretty close when we all see the public comment.
Okay, is there any other questions anybody has? I don't see anything in the chat that we missed. No? Okay. Anshul or Dion, was there any formal closure for this meeting or no? I just don't want to sit here in awkward silence if the questions have been exhausted at this point.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank
You're
you,
welcome.
supervisors and Joe and Janine, everyone for jumping in. And we thank everyone for coming today. This is just the starting point for us to get to January. I keep saying we're going to march on to January, folks, together. We thank you for all the comments that you've given, the questions that you provided. Again, we are taking notes and we will be using that to inform a lot of our decision making in these next few weeks. Please remember those emails in the chat where you can send additional comments and questions. You can also reach out to your group care licensor or supervisor team to have discussions and also have your questions answered there. Again, decisions are being made on a daily basis. And so if there isn't an answer today, we will be working towards an answer in the future. So again, we thank you all for being here, and we thank all of our staff who were here today as well. And we hope that in these next few weeks, we'll see you at trainings, and we'll see you ready for WAC in 26. Thank you all, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.